count them your end, can you?
Yes, yes, that's right.
I don't know how you do all this technology. I see you've got it on YouTube.
Yeah, so we're just going on YouTube in a minute and we will be going live.
So I saw you did something with Nimbus yesterday.
Yes, that's right. So bear
I
with
don't know how
me.
you do all this technology.
It's not that difficult. Where we are, we're live now, actually. Brilliant.
Okay, yeah.
So it's very straightforward, actually, Chris. It's all done through Zoom. So we're not doing very much. So it's just gone 11 o'clock. So it's perfect, guys. I'm here with Chris and hope you guys have got your cup of coffee, tea, water to join us and to
Cheers.
talk about exciting topics like stamp duty, land tax.
Morning, everybody.
Brilliant. So what I'll do, I'm just trying to get YouTube on my phone so I can see the people and they can join us and we can take on questions. So just bear with me for a second while I do that. So firstly, guys, a big welcome to Chris Ward and just a very quick introduction. Chris is formerly been an IFA for over 30 years and now works with Cornerstone Tax. And he's got an exciting new company that they've just started off this month called SDLT Compass. So, firstly, a big welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Manny. Thanks for today and organising it.
You're very welcome. So, Chris, I was going to say, could you give us a little bit of introduction to yourself and more excitingly tell us about SDLT Compass?
Yeah, sure. As Manny said, I worked in the IFA sector. I started my own business back in the mid-80s, built it up to be a top 100 IFA private client business. And in the end, sold that around RDR time in 2012. And about 5 years ago, joined Cornerstone Tax, who specialise in the SDLT as their professional connections director to help build up their SDLT refunds business, which we'll talk about in a minute. Manny, you mentioned Compass. Compass is part of the Cornerstone Group. It's the first ever SDLT calculator that takes into account all of the 44 different SDLT reliefs that most people don't know about, and which I'll touch on later. And Compass is for property lawyers and conveyancers, mainly because a lot of them are missing the reliefs and they're starting to get pursued and in fact sued by clients who should have paid a lower rate of SDLT.
That's an interesting thing you touched on there, Chris. So are you saying that let's say someone's incorrectly paid the SDLT tax and obviously the transaction's completed, properties have exchanged. Can we go back and then get a refund of some sort?
Yes, you can, Manny. You can go back up to 4 years and obtain a refund from HMRC. It's easier probably for 1 year because we can just simply repair the SDLT return and refile it. But providing we put together a case where there is a refund due, we can go back up to 4 years. Yeah.
Brilliant. So just as a sort of rule of thumb, how many refunds have you managed to get for some of your clients then?
Right. Good question. Well, first of all, we reckon about 1 in 4 SDLT returns are wrong and incorrect and overpaid. 1 in 4.
Wow.
We think I'll cover off some of the more common areas in a minute. We reckon that in value terms is about 2 billion a year of overpayments.
Wow.
And the main reason is that most property lawyers and conveyancers, in fact, most people simply go onto the HMRC calculator, which last year they admitted was just an estimator and should not be relied on, which doesn't take into account any of the reliefs. So quite often these reliefs are missed.
That, right? Most lawyers, because they're not SDLT experts themselves, they are, conveyancing experts, and they use other resources to calculate the SDLT, which, let's face it, in the last few years has changed a fair bit, right?
Well, SDLT was introduced back in 2003 to replace stamp duty. And at the time, it was the same rate of tax as the commercial rate, i.e. 4% was the top rate. And what's happened over the intervening period is that residential rates have gone up to the point where you're now paying 12% for anything above 1.5 million resi rate, plus another 3% if you've got a property, second property anywhere in the world. Plus, from the 1st of April, for non-UK residents purchasing in the UK, they're going to pay an extra 2% surcharge. So that's
12% plus 3%
plus
another 2.
Yeah, 17%. So if you're buying in London, say, for call it £5 million, instead of paying, £600,000 worth of stamp duty, you're going to be paying 17%, which is whatever it is. It's a lot more.
Yeah, a lot of money for tax.
Yeah. And the government see this as an area where they can pick up tax. They introduced this idea a few months ago, and we're just, time's crept on, and we're creeping up to the 1st of April. So yeah, it's a now biting tax that quite often can be. All we do, we just want the correct amount of tax paid.
Exactly.
Whether it be, we can advise pre-completion or post-completion, like you said, and go back for a refund. The reason we launched Compass was basically to provide the property lawyers and conveyancers with a piece of tax tech where they can input their clients' details. It takes about 5 minutes, and it gives them the correct amount of SDLT. It also gives them an audit trail for their file, which from last year under CQS rules, they were obliged to keep, but a lot of them aren't. And finally, it removes the risk of them giving SDLT advice to Cornerstone. So there's a PI payoff there, in so much as the risk moves to us for the advice, not them. Even though some of them think they aren't taking on risk by excluding it in their terms of business, our view is once they file the SDLT return, they are at risk because they've actually acted on it and told the client what to pay.
Yeah. So are you saying that solicitors don't actually? So you said they've been sued. You said, right?
Yeah. A lot of them now are getting sued, particularly for multiple dwellings relief that they're missing. For example, an annex above the garage or a cottage in the grounds or something like that. You can get multiple dwellings relief, which reduces the SDLT substantially.
Could you sort of explain a little bit about the multiple dwellings relief, a little bit, just for the layman, so they can?
Yeah, sure. We reckon there's probably, would you believe, 5 million houses in this country that have some form of annex. And that annex is basically, could be a self-contained part of the house with its own kitchen, toilet facility, a separate door to go into it, even though it might be part of the same house. It could be a sort of granny flat or something like that above a garage.
A garage even.
Yeah, as long as it's in the grounds, above the garage, if it's a separate building within the sort of confines of the property.
Within the premises, within the demise of the property.
Indeed, for bigger properties, they may even have maybe a cottage in the grounds for staff or whatever. But they all qualify for multiple dwellings relief, which can bring the stamp duty down from call it top end 12 down to potentially 7, 8, 9, 10% in percentage terms.
So from 12% to
as low as 5 in some cases.
So hang on, just to completely get this correct, it's mainly for the annex, and the annex has to be a living accommodation. So it can't be an office, or it can't be a games room or anything like that.
Right, not a games room. Now, you mentioned office. Now, one of the reliefs that you can apply for, and I'll explain a bit more, is let's say you've got an office for your business in the grounds of your house, and that's going to happen more and more. And it's classed as a separate part of the house with its own, as I say, amenities, whether
water
it be
connection, toilet,
the kitchen, something like that, that you can actually class as living accommodation. That would qualify for multiple dwellings relief. In fact, we would probably apply a mixed use rate, because we can take it from resi to commercial. And going back to my point on rates, when SDLT was introduced in 2003, what's happened is the resi rates have gone up, but the commercial rates have stayed virtually the same. So the top commercial rate is 5%. The top residential rate is 12 plus 3, potentially plus 2 for non-resis. So if we can argue and justify a mixed use rate, what that does is means that the SDLT payable can be 5% instead of 12 or 15 or 17.
So just to clarify then for everyone listening in, guys. So what we're trying to explain is, let's say you're buying a house and it's got an annex.
Yeah.
And the annex could be a livable granny annex where someone lives there. But as long as it's detached from the main house, but in the demise of your property, it could even be an office with some sort of utility connections, a little kitchenette possibly for tea, coffees, and a toilet. Then you can claim you don't have to pay the whole 12% residential rate.
Yeah.
You pay the 5% mixed use, i.e. commercial rate. Well, residential rate is 12 plus 3% surcharge.
Yeah.
The 2% if you're an international buyer and you're buying in the UK.
Correct.
5% as compared to an international buyer at 17%.
Yeah. So we can argue mixed use commercial rate when we come across things like, shall I throw in some examples for you?
Yes, please. So at the moment, guys, we're just talking about multiple dwellings relief, which is just one of the 44 reliefs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So MDR, as we call it, applies, just to clarify, will give you a lower SDLT relief. It's not down to 5. It's a percentage that comes off, depends, because we divide the value, the property value by 2, and then apply the stamp duty to the divisible value. So it basically reduces it. Where we can justify mixed use, we can get it into commercial. So that could be, like I say, an office in the grounds of the house, a workshop, a public footpath going across the grounds, a way leave, which is a grant to a utility company where you allow them to put a gas line or electricity or water across your land. Typically, you get a small peppercorn rent for that. We can argue that as mixed use and apply the commercial rate for things like that.
Oh, so you were going to share an example, Chris, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of case studies here. I'll just talk through if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, just a question here. So just wanted to welcome a couple of people on the chat. So welcome, Bushra. And her question is, so even if the annex is included on the same freehold title?
Yep, that counts. That counts for MDR.
Bushra is actually a solicitor as well, bless her. And obviously Bushra, you may have missed the earlier part of the conversation where Chris has just started a new company for solicitors and conveyancers, SDLT Compass. So please do look at that website. I'll put it on the chat as well. So yeah, sorry, Chris, you were going to give an example.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just run through 1 or 2 examples of where we've used different reliefs. So these are live examples that we worked on late last year. The first one is a London apartment that was purchased actually in Buckingham Gate in southwest London. Now, that apartment had access to a communal garden square.
Communal garden
square. So a communal garden square in London. A lot of properties in London have access to communal gardens, and typically they pay a nominal amount of money for that access, either through their council tax and or through a separate standalone communal garden agreement. In this case, the apartment was bought for 1.960 million.
1.960.
Okay. I can send you these, Manny, to send around. I've got them on a PDF.
Yeah.
£148,950 worth of SDLT was paid. We had a look at that transaction after it completed and identified that a client had access to the shared garden and also paid the nominal fee I just mentioned.
Yeah.
As a result, the property we felt had been misclassified, and the communal garden, because it can be classed as non-resident property, not wholly and exclusively for the dwelling. and applied the mixed use rate. So we then wrote to HMRC on the 24th of July last year and successfully argued that case that it'd been incorrectly classed as residential and should have been mixed use. And we got a refund for the client of £61,705.
Wow.
Plus, that included £255 worth of interest. That was a quick turnaround. We applied on the 24th of July, and we got that refund on the 17th of August.
Within a month?
Yeah.
61,000. They could have done a lot with 61,000.
Remember, that's tax. You've paid it out in tax. You got it back tax-free. So very happy client there. Wow. I have to admit that was quite a quick turnaround.
And that's because of the fact that they had access to communal gardens, which, as you said, in London is fairly common. Yeah,
we've done a number of cases, and we've got quite a lot going through right now for communal gardens in London. And it doesn't have to be London. It could be anywhere, any city that has that sort of amenity, really.
Okay, so we've talked about multiple dwellings relief, and actually, can we just stop for a second, if you don't mind? There's another question by Bushra.
Yeah.
So Bushra is saying, thanks for that. What is the situation on a freehold title of 5 flats? Can you get MDR if the self-contained flats are not registered on land registry separately?
Interesting question. I'd have to double check that. I think the answer is yes. But if I can have a bit more detail, I can easily check. We don't charge for doing reviews, by the way. But something like that, I just check with one of our tax analysts just to make sure I'm giving the right advice. But I think the answer is yes, but I'd love to check that.
The question is basically, someone's buying a freehold block of flats.
Yeah.
So the question is whether they should be having separate titles or not.
Well, it's either 5 or 6 where it automatically qualifies for MDR. I just can't remember whether it's 5 or 6 flats. So I'd love to have a look at the if you can arrange to ping the details over to me.
Yes, of course. So I'll just let Bushra know. Please ping it. What's your email address, Chris?
cward@ctatax. ctatax.uk.com.
And it's a free consultation.
Yeah, we don't charge for review. We only charge on success, Manny. Just to remind you, we're generally charge 25% of what we save pre-completion, or 25% of any refund we get back from HMRC.
Right.
So that's fully indemnified advice, and we take it all the way until we get a result.
Brilliant. So basically, it's no win, no fee type thing, right?
No win, no fee, correct.
Yeah, well, what have you got to lose, right?
Yeah, so a question like you just asked me, if I don't know the answer, we got 10 tax analysts in-house that do nothing but reviews, and I go straight to them, get a response, and typically we're back to people within 24 hours.
Fantastic. So we've covered multiple dwellings relief, and I think the way that works is basically, let's say, if I'm buying, as in Bushra's example, a block of 5 flats, technically, we don't know whether we need it on a separate title or not, but let's assume that we are entitled for this relief. Then if I'm buying it, let's say for £1 million, then
divide by 5.
Yeah.
So you divide by 5 and you
divide it by 5. So that's each flat is technically worth 200,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then under 250,000 is no stamp duty land tax anyway, right?
Yeah. So you should be able to get that down to virtually 0. Again, we look at each case as it comes up, so to make sure it's structured right.
Yes,
but
exactly.
yeah, I mean,
make sure it's structured. But let's say if you qualify for the MDR, then technically in that example, we don't pay it.
Yeah.
So people who are in the business of buying investment blocks, they could make a massive, savings.
Yeah, absolutely. We work with a lot of developers.
And the thing is, a lot of people are not even aware of this. Okay, yes, multiple dwellings relief is fairly known. People don't know the technicalities of it as much.
No.
There are lots of technicalities, as you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
So if you're unsure, the best thing to do is contact you.
Yeah, we check it over and ask the right questions, get the answers, and give the advice.
So there was another interesting question I had for you. So I was talking to one of your associates, and we were buying a new build. So basically, we're buying the commercial building, and it had planning for 4 houses on it.
Right.
Trying to figure out whether there's some sort of multiple dwellings relief on it, because at the moment it was, well, when we bought it, it was just a one commercial unit, one commercial building.
Right.
One use, I think it was. But with the planning permission for 4. And we were trying to figure out, but I think there was some, so is there some sort of possible dwellings relief there? I know on my one.
So but you would have paid did you pay the commercial rate at the time?
The commercial rate, that's
yeah,
correct.
There may be, I mean, 5% you may, how much did you pay, Manny?
Yes, I paid up, I think 22,500. I don't know how much is the percentage wise.
Yeah, so what was the purchase price?
660,000.
Yeah, it sounds to me as though you've paid about 4%. Which there's less scope on commercial. We can't, I mean, again, we look at each one on its merits, but typically with commercial, because you're starting at a lower rate, i.e. 5%, it's the scope for reduction is less than residential. So yes, you want to pay the correct amount. It could be 5, could be 4. Some cases we got down to 1. In fact, if you're a trader, property trader, this is interesting, and you're buying from maybe personal representatives of a probate sale, you can argue as a trader, and this also applies if you're coming in either on doing relocation packages or chain breaking. In other words, you're doing it basically an in and an out. So you can actually argue 0 rate SDLT in those cases as a trader.
So hang on, let me just get this right. So the trader and the probate, is that linked, or can you get SDLT relief on anything with probate?
No, look, you've got to be set up as a trader, either as a limited company or a partnership or a sole trader, with a view where you're buying and selling, typically within a 6-week period. So there's only a short window. But if you're set up right as a trader, and some of the people you know will be, they're trade 100%. Property, then you can argue a 0 rate of SDLT.
0.
There's a case we ran called Bewley where we successfully argued that.
And when was that? When did you win that case?
It was either last year or year before. It's either 19 or 20.
So hang on. So basically, there's so many property traders out there who just do this for in and out.
Yeah.
Let's say they even, sometimes what they do is they'll exchange contracts, they'll do a transferable contract.
Yeah.
And then they'll put in an auction and then they'll sell it again.
Yeah.
So they would have had to pay 0 to...
Yeah, as long as you're buying from, in this case, a probate sale. Okay, so again, there's people out there doing that. You're chain breaking.
Chain breaking is what? Give me a practical example.
Well, where somebody drops out and you replace them. So let's say so you've got somebody buying a house, they can't complete and you step in.
Yeah.
Okay, you can argue you're actually stepping into their shoes as a trader. You're going to sell the property on. You can look for a 0 rate of SDLT in those cases.
Oh, it doesn't matter what the value of the property is. Could be £1 million, could be whatever.
Yeah.
You're just, and is it that you have an intention to be a chain breaker?
Yes. Well, you got to do it. You got to do it. Again, the best, because that's, if you like, pre-completion advice. If somebody's got a case like that, then we need to have a look at it ahead of the time just to confirm that. Agree a fee with them and then give the advice. By the way, we carry £1.5 million worth of PI. We've never had a claim, but we have got PI insurance. So if something did go wrong, we are covered.
Oh, wow. Brilliant. Okay. So let's quickly recap then. So we talked initially about multiple dwellings relief, which is when you're buying a block of flats. Mainly, is that what it is? Mainly block of flats? Yeah,
for commercial, yeah. Then there's a case for arguing down the 5% rate to 4%, 3%, or even 1%.
Yeah, as compared to 12.
Well, if you're buying as a commercial, you're going to pay 5. If you're buying, obviously, as a block of residential, then yeah, you're going to pay the
block of
resi rate.
residential is just considered as a C3, right?
Yeah.
So you'd be saving from 12 to, you'd be paying commercial rate, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So that's multiple dwellings relief. Then you've talked about the trader and the probate.
Yes.
What else? Is there any other, which ones, are we covered all the top 5 yet? Or
No. I've mentioned communal gardens. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the third one. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'll just move on now and quote another case study, if I may, because this will introduce another idea for you. So we had a client, again in London, purchased an apartment in Albert Embankment for 1.1 million and paid 86,750 in SDLT.
Yeah.
And that was the 12% plus the 3% they paid because they had another property. We had a look at that property and found that they paid a reservation fee, non-refundable reservation fee of £2,500 prior to completion. So to secure the property, they'd entered into a reservation agreement with the vendor and paid £2,500 non-refundable. So if they didn't complete, they lost £2,500. So they went ahead and completed. And because they used a reservation agreement, again, we can use class this as non-residential transaction because the reservation agreement is classed as a separate land transaction and does not meet the definition of residential. It's classed as non-resi, which means we can charge the commercial rate. And we applied to the HMRC for a mixed use rate of 5 and got them a refund of £42,250 plus £72.35 worth of interest. We got that back. We applied in, we wrote to HMRC on the 11th of September last year and we got that back on the 1st of October. Again, 3 weeks.
3 weeks, and that's literally half of their what they paid. So, and this is purely
because of reservation agreement.
Yeah. So before they exchange contracts, they commitment fee sort of a thing to say, I'm definitely buying it. To stop marketing it. You know, it's like you put a reservation fee on a room or a house and say, look, I'm getting this property, I'm letting this property or whatever as a basic fee.
Yeah.
And that reservation fee was before exchange though, right?
Yeah. Typically you find an apartment, I mean, this is for cities mainly, but not always. You can use it for any purchase, as long as the vendor, if you're the purchaser, you normally say to the vendor, look, I'm happy to enter into a reservation agreement and secure with a non-refundable deposit, call it £1,000, £2,000. We did a big one last year in St James's in London, where the non-refundable deposit was 100,000. The property purchase was 65 million. It was a very expensive penthouse in St James's. We applied for mixed use again as a refund, so it was after the event. They paid the SDLT and we got them 4.8 million back.
4.8 million back.
Yeah, it's the biggest case we've ever done.
Huge. I mean, you should be screaming on rooftops about this, Chris. That's like, a few properties anywhere in England. You could buy a few towns up north somewhere.
Yeah, I know.
At 4.8 million, most people can't afford to buy a house of that sort.
I know, that's a lot of money, isn't it?
That's a lot of money. That is shocking. I mean, so have you got all these case studies on your websites? Then people can actually.
Yeah, a lot of them are actually. Yeah, and we do publish these on LinkedIn and social media, but yeah, on our website, CTA website, there's a lot listed there. We have 2 websites. One is cta.tax.uk.com and the other is SDLT Refunds.
cta.tax.com.
UK.com. And the other is sdltrefunds.co.uk. If people have a look at those, they'll see more about Cornerstone and more about what we do on refunds. And
refunds.co.uk, yeah?
Yeah. I can ping those over to you.
Yeah, I'll put it on the chat anyway, so people, whoever is watching it afterwards as well, because we've got a few people joined in, but generally what happens is people then watch it in their own time and then see all these sort of messages coming through. So yeah, was there anything else that you'd like to cover?
Yeah, I'll just mention a few of the, if you like, the less common ones.
Yeah.
I've mentioned just in conversation way leaves and businesses and
Just remind me, the way leaves is where you have a utility connection going on your property, like
yeah,
a water connection pipe or a gas or electric.
correct. We reckon there's something like 6 million way leaves in the UK.
Oh yes, of course. Can you think about amount of pipe work there is in the whole of the
Yeah,
UK,
yeah,
going through a lot of properties, right?
yeah, yeah. And I think I also mentioned right at the beginning, people that have paddocks or woodland or copse or farmland, we can quite often, if it's over something like 2 acres of land, we can quite often argue a mixed use rate for those. We did one last year where there was a lake. I did another one last year near to where I live in Henley-on-Thames, which was actually a mixture of a way leave and a historic monument. They'd been given a stone circle. I mean, it's quite a lot of land. There's probably about, I'm guessing, 20 acres of land in total. But on the land, there was a stone circle that had been given 120 years ago by the people of, I think it was Guernsey, to the owner at the time. And it was classified as a historic monument. And that actually allows us to apply a mixed use rate of SDRT.
And just remind me, is 4% or 5%?
5%.
5%.
5%, yeah.
So yes, so just again to recap, guys, these are all the exemptions and reliefs for stamp duty when you're buying a property that Chris is going through. And we've covered quite a few, and these are some of the other ones that he's mentioning. So these are great for rural countryside properties, then I'd say, Chris, because
yeah,
the huge trend now, isn't there? People leaving London and going and living further afield. Space has become a premium now, and people will end up buying these sort of 2 million, 3 million pound properties, and instead of paying 15% tax, they'd be paying 5%.
Yeah, yeah. Just I don't know if it applied to many of your people, but going back to the non-resident surcharge of 2%, which applies from the 1st of April on top of the 12 and the 3.
Yeah.
It also, let's say it's a limited company or a property partnership acquiring any form of property in the UK, they've only got to have one shareholder or a director or both that's non-resident. They might be living anywhere overseas. Then that actually gets caught in the trap for the extra 2%.
Yeah.
So probably doesn't apply to many people, but I can see 1 or 2 people getting caught out on that one.
Yeah. So that 2% surcharge kicks off this year, 2021, guys. So be very careful. If you've got a company with a non-resident, a UK non-resident as a shareholder, then you will be liable for the 12% residential tax plus 3% plus the 2% surcharge coming on live on the 1st of April, 2021. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah. I've got one more case study if I've got time.
Yeah,
time.
Let's do it.
Okay, in this case, it's a limited company purchasing land, which was actually down in Reigate in Surrey. That the purchase price was 5.45 million. Prior to completion, they entered into an exclusivity agreement and paid, so it's a reservation agreement, basically, same thing, and paid a non-refundable fee of £272,500. So they basically secured the land with 272,500. At the time of completion, the land had the benefit of permitted development rights to convert the existing building into 24 residential dwellings.
Yeah.
The development proposal was approved prior to completion, and on the effective date of the transaction, our client began removing existing partition walls in order to adapt the building for residential use. We reviewed it. We identified the site should have been classed as mixed use and that multiple dwellings was available at the time of completion. As a result, we actually applied for a refund of the SDLT for 98,000 and got them that back within 3 weeks.
So how much did they pay initially then?
They paid, well, I'm not sure exactly what they paid. I haven't got the number in front of me. It would have been something like probably about £1 million worth of SDLT.
So
No, sorry, about £500,000.
So
about £500,000.
and
We
you
got
got
the 98,000 back.
So they paid and end up paying 400,000 instead of 500,000.
Yeah, on a 5 million purchase.
Which it's a big amount, right? So my question to you is, what made that possible? One was a reservation fee.
Yeah, and they also qualified for multiple dwellings relief.
So altogether, that amounted to about 100,000 in savings.
Yeah.
So did they end up paying the commercial rate, then the mixed use rate?
Yes. Yeah. On the property they did, and also MDR. So that's 2 reliefs they got.
So you can combine reliefs as well.
Yeah. You can combine MDR and mixed use. With mixed use, you don't get any extra deduction, but you can put a case where there are 2 reasons why you should be getting a refund or paying a lower amount. So it could be, for example, a way leave and say some farmland. Or an annex would be MDR and a way leave. Yeah, so you could successfully get 2 there on a resi.
Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is, even if there's 2 exemptions, you end up paying the minimum exemption relief is about 5%, right?
Yeah,
so
correct.
That's the minimum tax SDLT that you'd normally pay.
Yeah.
Then to come to that point, you need to prove those different exemptions that we've talked about.
That's the minimum if you're buying above. Well, it's the minimum anyway. Right now, there's a holiday, as you know. So if it's below 500, it's 0.
Even the second property, Chris, because that's the confusion there.
Right. That's an interesting one. Well, I'm pretty sure from the cases we've done, from memory, the 3% is payable.
It is payable.
Yeah, it is payable. Yeah.
So the 500,000 is only if you're buying. Let's say you're a first-time buyer, then the exemption is available right now.
Yeah.
Not for second and more.
Yeah, you get it if you're doing selling and buying for 500 or less. It's not just first time buyer.
Oh, anyone. So like I'm buying, I own properties already, but if I'm buying another one now, a residential property, let's say for 500,000 hypothetically, I paid 0 stamp.
Yeah, we'll find out next week whether that's going to be extended.
So what's your prediction then?
Well, to start with, I didn't think they would, because it's cost roughly, the estimate of cost has been about 3 billion.
3 billion of
there's been a huge amount of transactions going on. The property lawyers have been buried in transactions, so I didn't think they'd extend it. Then I thought they might do it by way of, you've got to exchange by the 31st of March to get the relief. But last Sunday there was a leak in, I think it was the Sunday Times or one of them, where they're saying he's going to extend it to the end of June.
So you have to then basically complete by 30th of June, basically.
June, correct, yeah.
But I think it might be right, Chris, because he's extending furlough apparently, he's extending the business rates holidays. So I think maybe end of June is the right, because I think the idea is that 21st of June, the whole economy completely opens up.
Yeah, you could well be right, Manny. They're using the back end of June as the time where we're all unlocked and we can get back to normal living and business. Yeah. Go to a restaurant or a pub or something, you want to do mix.
Exactly. I'm going to very quickly recap before we finish this call, and I think it's been super useful. I, for one, didn't know a lot of these things existed, guys. So if you're looking to buy properties and you want to save money in stamp duty, land tax, the top 5 ones that we very quickly discuss, and you can watch the video back for details, is annex, whether it's granny annex, an office possibly with some sort of utilities there. Then you have the way leave, where you have connections on your demise. You have then, say, paddocks or lake or some sort of a historical monument on your land.
Yeah.
Then if you've paid a non-refundable reservation fee for your property, And last but not the least, if you are a property trader and you bought a probate property as well. So all of these exemptions will then make you pay up about 5%, which is a mixed use stamp duty, land tax, compared to 12% for residential, plus the 3% charge, plus the 2% coming in for non-UK residentials.
Yeah.
So, I think I've learned a lot today.
Yeah, well done. And just to finish on that, anything commercial or non-residential on that land means that you can apply a mixed use rate of 5. And obviously the one we also covered was communal gardens as well.
Yes, communal gardens as well. Fantastic. I think there's a lot. And I think, guys, please make sure you watch the full video. You can save yourself potentially a lot of money. Do get in touch with Chris. That's cward at
CTAtax.
ctatax.co.uk.com.
No, ctatax.uk.com.
I've got your email there.
Yeah.
Get in touch with Chris for a free consultation, and they only charge a fee when you get the refund. So no win, no fee from Chris Cornerstone and the new SDLT Compass, which is open to all solicitors, and it's going to be this official stamp duty calculator for the UK. Is that correct?
It is. It's unique. It's fully comprehensive and takes into account all the 44 reliefs. And all the ones I've mentioned today would trigger a relief that would normally be missed. So,
and guys, absolutely. And guys, do go onto the websites for more information and more details on all the 44 reliefs. Obviously, we couldn't cover all of them today, but we've covered the popular ones. So Chris, really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for taking the time out today. And we'll be in touch.
Pleasure.